The soft glow of multicolored Christmas lights reflected in 8-year-old Emma's wide blue eyes as she pressed her nose against the observation deck's reinforced viewport. Behind her, the makeshift Christmas tree, constructed from spare titanium struts and adorned with holographic ornaments, cast dancing shadows across the cramped quarters of Research Station Kepler 442b. "Look, Daddy," Emma whispered, her breath fogging the transparent aluminum. "The binary stars make the tree look like it's sparkling with real snow." Dr. Marcus Chun smiled wearily, adjusting his daughter's position so she could see better while he continued monitoring the atmospheric readings on his tablet. The Kepler system's twin suns created an ethereal aurora across the planet's upper atmosphere, painting the alien sky in shades of green and gold that no Earth-born Christmas could match. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Marcus murmured, though his attention was divided between his daughter's wonder and the increasingly erratic seismic readings scrolling across his screen. For the past 3 days, the planet's core had been showing unusual activity, tremors that didn't match any geological patterns they'd studied in their 18 months on this remote world. The research station housed 43 souls, a mix of scientists, engineers, and their families. They were part of humanity's first deep space colonization survey, testing whether Kepler 442b could support permanent human settlement. So far, the results have been promising. The atmosphere was breathable with minimal augmentation, the gravity only 15% heavier than Earth's, and the abundant geothermal energy could power their operations indefinitely. Christmas Eve had been Marcus's idea. Despite being light years from home, he'd insisted they maintain Earth traditions for the children. 7 kids under 12 called the station home, and Marcus refused to let them lose touch with their humanity just because they were pioneers on an alien world. "The tree's pretty, Uncle Marcus," said Tommy, age 6, son of the station's chief engineer. The boy had been born on the journey here, making him one of the first truly interstellar humans. His casual reference to the alien sky as normal always gave Marcus pause. "Dr. Chun," the voice belonged to Sarah Martinez, the station's xenobiologist. Her tone carried an edge that immediately put Marcus on alert. "Could I speak with you privately?" Marcus glanced at Emma, who was now lying on her stomach, chin propped on her hands, watching the aurora dance. "Emma, stay right here where I can see you, okay?" She nodded absently, transfixed by the light show. Marcus followed Sarah to the corner of the observation deck, noting how her usually steady hands trembled slightly as she activated her personal tablet. "Marcus, look at this," Sarah whispered, showing him a spectrographic analysis. "I've been running continuous atmospheric scans, and something's changed in the past 6 hours. There's a new electromagnetic signature in the upper atmosphere. It's artificial." Marcus studied the readout, his blood growing cold as the implications sank in. "This pattern, it's too regular to be natural phenomena." "Exactly, and it's getting stronger." Sarah swiped to the next screen, revealing a 3-dimensional map of the electromagnetic disturbances. "Whatever's generating the signature is approximately 4,000 kilometers above us, and moving in a controlled pattern. A spacecraft. That's my assessment. But, Marcus, the energy output readings, this thing is massive. Easily 100 times larger than anything humanity has ever built." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. In all their surveys of the Kepler system, they'd found no signs of intelligent life. The planet showed clear evidence of complex ecosystems, but nothing that suggested technological civilization. Their long-range sensors would have detected any large artificial objects in the system. "How did it get here without triggering our perimeter alerts?" Sarah's expression darkened. "That's what worries me. Either it's using technology so advanced our sensors can't detect it properly, or—" She paused, reluctant to voice the alternative. "Or is already here, and we just didn't know it." Before Sarah could respond, the station's communication array crackled to life. Chief Communications Officer David Park's voice echoed through the observation deck speakers, tense with barely controlled panic. "All senior staff to the command center immediately. We're receiving a transmission on multiple frequencies. It's not from Earth." Marcus looked back at Emma, who had turned at the sound of the announcement. Her innocent expression reminded him of what was at stake here. These weren't just researchers anymore. They were potentially humanity's first ambassadors to an alien intelligence. "Sarah, can you watch Emma for a moment?" "Of course." Marcus hurried through the station's narrow corridors, noting how the usual Christmas Eve chatter had died to an anxious murmur. The command center buzzed with activity as the senior staff gathered around the main display screen. Captain Rebecca Torres, the station commander, stood at the center of the chaos, her military bearing evident despite the civilian setting. "Report," Marcus said as he entered. David Park looked up from his console, sweat beading on his forehead. "The transmission started 20 minutes ago. It's broadcasting simultaneously across 17 different frequencies, including some we can't even decode properly. The pattern suggests they're trying to establish communication protocols." "What kind of transmission?" "That's the thing," David continued, his voice strained. "It's not random. There's definitely intelligence behind it. Mathematical sequences, prime numbers, even what looks like basic pictographic representations." On the main screen, a complex series of symbols scrolled past, accompanied by audio tones that seemed to follow mathematical relationships. Marcus recognized some of the patterns. They were similar to the theoretical first contact protocols developed by Earth SETI researchers decades ago. "Any response from Earth?" asked Dr. Elena Volkov, the station's chief physicist. "Communication lag is 14 minutes each way," Captain Torres replied grimly. "Even if we sent a message right now, we wouldn't hear back for half an hour. Whatever decisions we make here, we make them alone." Marcus studied the alien symbols, his mind racing through possibilities. The mathematical nature of the transmission suggested benign intent, a desire to communicate rather than threaten. But the sheer scale of the electromagnetic signature Sarah had detected indicated capabilities far beyond human technology. "Captain, I recommend we respond," he said finally. "The transmission pattern suggests they're following standard first contact protocols. They're trying to establish a baseline for communication. And if they're hostile," Marcus gestured toward the symbols on the screen. "If they wanted to harm us, would they bother with mathematical sequences? They could simply attack. The fact that they're trying to communicate suggests they want something other than our destruction." Engineering Chief Rodriguez raised his hand. "Captain, I've been analyzing the power requirements for a transmission this complex. Whatever's up there is using more energy in 10 minutes than our entire station consumes in a year. If they wanted us gone, they could probably vaporize us from orbit." The room fell silent as the implications settled in. They were dealing with a civilization so technologically advanced that their research station was, comparatively, a campfire next to a nuclear reactor. "David, prepare a response transmission," Captain Torres ordered. "Basic mathematical sequences, then pictographic representations of our species, and peaceful intent." "Aye, Captain." As David began encoding their response, Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate controls. Through the command center's small viewport, he could see the observation deck where Emma and the other children continued watching the aurora, unaware that their universe had just become infinitely larger and more dangerous. The transmission continued for another 10 minutes before abruptly stopping. The command center's audio systems fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. "Did they receive our response?" Captain Torres asked. David checked his instruments. "Transmitted successfully on all frequencies they were using. If they're still monitoring, they got it." Minutes stretched into an hour. The staff maintained their positions, but Marcus could see the strain wearing on everyone. This was supposed to be Christmas Eve, a time for family and celebration. Instead, they found themselves at the center of humanity's first confirmed contact with an alien intelligence. "Captain," Sarah's voice came through the intercom from the observation deck. "You need to see this." They rushed back to find Sarah and the children staring out the viewport in stunned silence. High above them, visible even through the planet's atmosphere, 3 massive shapes had appeared in the sky. They looked like elongated diamonds, each one easily 20 kilometers in length, hanging motionless against the star field. Jesus Rodriguez whispered. "They're beautiful." The ships, for lack of a better term, seemed to pulse with internal light, their surfaces shifting through colors that had no names in human language. They maintained perfect formation, neither advancing nor retreating, simply present. Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Daddy, are those the Christmas angels you told me about?" Marcus knelt beside his daughter, struggling to find words that could explain the magnitude of what they were witnessing. "I don't know, sweetheart, but they're definitely special." The moment of wonder shattered when the station's emergency klaxon began screaming through the corridors, its piercing wail designed to penetrate every corner of the facility and jolt even sleeping personnel to full alertness. Red warning lights bathed the observation deck in an ominous glow as Captain Torres's voice echoed through the emergency communication system. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Unknown contacts detected on collision course with station perimeter. Estimated time to impact, 37 minutes. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. The three magnificent ships they'd been admiring were no longer stationary. According to the tactical display, now dominating the command center's main screen, dozens of smaller craft had separated from the larger vessels and were descending rapidly through the planet's atmosphere. "Daddy, why is the siren so loud?" Emma asked, pressing her hands against her ears. Marcus lifted his daughter, his mind automatically shifting into crisis mode. 18 months of emergency drills had prepared them for equipment failures, atmospheric breaches, even seismic disasters. No one had prepared them for this. "Sarah, get the children to the emergency shelter," he called over the alarm. "Follow Protocol 7. Marcus, what about just go now?" As Sarah began herding the confused and frightened children toward the station's reinforced core, Marcus ran back to the command center. The tactical display showed the incoming objects more clearly now, sleek, organic-looking craft that seemed to flow through the atmosphere rather than cutting through it. "Weapon status?" Captain Torres demanded. "We have defensive lasers and emergency mining charges," Rodriguez reported. "But, Captain, those are designed for asteroid deflection and excavation work. Against technology this advanced." "I know the odds, Chief. Prepare what we have." Marcus studied the approaching craft, noting their flight patterns. Something nagged at him about their formation. Too precise, too purposeful for a random attack. "Captain, look at their approach vector. They're not heading for the station directly." Torres examined the display more carefully. "You're right. They're spreading out across the entire hemisphere." David Park looked up from his communications console, his face pale. "Captain, I'm receiving new transmissions from the incoming craft. It's the same mathematical sequences as before, but more urgent. Higher frequency repetition." "More urgent how?" "Like they're trying to tell us something time-sensitive." The patterns change from the slow, deliberate sequence to rapid-fire bursts. Elena Volkov had been quietly running calculations on her tablet. She looked up with an expression of dawning horror. "Captain, I think I know what they're trying to tell us. The seismic readings Marcus has been tracking, they're not natural planetary activity." "Explain." "The frequency patterns in the alien transmission match the seismic disturbances. They're warnings. The planet's core isn't destabilizing naturally. Something's causing it to destabilize." Torres stared at the physicist. "Are you saying the planet's going to—" "If my calculations are correct, Kepler 442b has approximately 6 hours before catastrophic core failure. Complete planetary destruction." The command center fell silent except for the continuing wail of the emergency siren. Marcus felt the universe tilt around him as the implications crashed home. The beautiful ships they'd been admiring weren't harbingers of destruction. They were rescue vessels. The aliens weren't here to invade. They were here to evacuate. Outside the viewports, the Aurora continued its ethereal dance across the alien sky, now taking on the appearance of a cosmic funeral shroud as the first of the unknown craft touched down on the planet's surface, their alien geometries stark against the familiar landscape that had been humanity's home among the stars. Christmas Eve on Kepler 442b was ending, and with it, perhaps humanity's first chance at peaceful contact with an intelligence that spanned the void between worlds. In the emergency shelter, 7 human children huddled together while their parents made impossible decisions in rooms filled with screens showing the end of their world. The cubs had gazed at the Christmas tree in wonder and innocence. Now the piercing siren screamed through the silence, and everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe was about to change forever. The emergency shelter hummed with recycled air and the quiet sobs of children who didn't understand why their Christmas Eve had turned into a nightmare. Marcus crouched beside Emma, who clutched a small stuffed reindeer, one of the few personal items they'd been allowed to bring when the evacuation order came. "Daddy, when can we go back to see the tree?" Emma asked, her voice small and confused. Marcus exchanged a look with Sarah, who was trying to keep the other children calm through improvised storytelling. "How do you explain to an 8-year-old that the world she's known for half her life is about to die? We might be going on a new adventure, sweetheart," Marcus said carefully. "Remember how we talked about being explorers? Sometimes explorers have to travel to new places. Through the shelter's reinforced walls, they could hear the distant rumble of the alien craft landing across the planet's surface. The seismic sensors embedded in the shelter's structure translated each touchdown into a gentle vibration through the floor. Dozens of ships, each one larger than their entire research station. The shelter's communication panel crackled to life. Dr. Chun, please report to the command center immediately. Marcus kissed Emma's forehead. Stay with Sarah, okay? I'll be back soon. The journey through the station's corridors revealed the organized chaos of an evacuation in progress. Personnel moved with practiced efficiency, securing critical data and preparing emergency supplies. But Marcus could see the questions in their eyes. Where were they evacuating to? Earth was 14 light years away, and their supply ships weren't due for another 8 months. In the command center, Captain Torres stood before the main display, which now showed a real-time feed from the station's external cameras. The alien vessels had transformed the familiar landscape into something from a fever dream. Sleek, organic shapes dotted the horizon like massive seeds that had sprouted from the planet's surface. Status report, Marcus said as he entered. 17 craft have landed within 50 kilometers of our position, Torres replied. No hostile actions detected. In fact, they seem to be maintaining a respectful distance from our installation. Elena Volkov looked up from her tablet, her face grim. Marcus, the core destabilization is accelerating. My revised calculations give us 4 hours, maybe less. What about the evacuation protocols? That's why I called you here, Torres said. We need to make contact with whoever's out there. Our emergency evacuation craft can carry maybe 15 people to the orbital station, but that leaves 28 personnel with no way off-world. David Park raised his hand from his communications console. Captain, we're still receiving transmissions from the alien craft. The pattern has changed again. They're broadcasting what looks like coordinates. On the screen, a series of mathematical sequences resolved into three-dimensional spatial coordinates. Elena quickly ran the numbers through the station's navigation computer. These coordinates point to a location 8 kilometers northeast of here, she reported. It's the landing site of the largest alien vessel. Marcus studied the tactical display. The ship in question was massive, easily twice the size of the others, with a complex geometry that seemed to shift subtly even as he watched. They want us to come to them. It could be a trap, Rodriguez warned. We don't know their intentions. Chief, if they wanted to harm us, they could have done it already, Torres replied. Dr. Volkov, in your professional opinion, what are our chances of surviving the planetary core collapse if we remain here? 0%, Captain. Torres nodded grimly. Then we take the chance. Dr. Chun, you have the most experience with xenobiological protocols. I want you to lead a contact team to the alien vessel. Marcus felt his stomach lurch. Captain, I can't leave Emma. You won't be. This is a family evacuation. Doctor, everyone goes. The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. Emergency supplies were loaded onto the station's ground vehicles. Water purification tablets, medical supplies, and, most importantly, portable atmosphere processors that could sustain human life in unknown environments. The children were told they were going on a special field trip to meet their new neighbors. Marcus made sure Emma's emergency pressure suit fit properly, checking the seals twice before he was satisfied. The adult suits were military grade, designed for hostile environment work, but the children's suits had been hastily adapted from standard atmospheric gear. I look funny, Emma giggled, her voice slightly distorted by the suit's communication system. You look like a real space explorer, Marcus assured her, just like the astronauts in the stories. The convoy of 6 vehicles left the station as Kepler 442b's twin suns reached their zenith, casting double shadows across the alien landscape. Marcus drove the lead vehicle, with Emma secured in the passenger seat beside him. In the back, Sarah monitored atmospheric readings while Tommy and 2 other children pressed their faces against the windows, chattering excitedly about the adventure. The landscape they traveled through had been their home for 18 months, but now it felt alien and temporary. Rolling hills covered in crystalline vegetation stretched toward mountains that scraped the planet's purple sky. Geothermal vents dotted the terrain, releasing clouds of steam that created an otherworldly fog. Daddy, why are the plants so sparkly? Emma asked, pointing to the crystal formations that grew like trees across the hills. The silicon-based life forms here evolved differently than plants on Earth, Marcus explained, grateful for the distraction. They use crystalline structures to capture energy from the binary suns. What he didn't mention was how those same beautiful formations had fooled their initial surveys into thinking the planet was uninhabited. Only after months of careful study had they realized the crystal plants were actually a form of distributed intelligence, a planetary consciousness that had been dormant when they arrived. The alien ship came into view as they crested a hill, and Marcus had to fight to keep the vehicle steady. The craft was beautiful in a way that challenged human perception. Its surface seemed to flow like liquid mercury, constantly shifting between solid and fluid states. Organic curves blended with geometric precision, creating an architecture that belonged neither to nature nor engineering as humans understood them. "My God," Sarah breathed through the communication system. "It's like a living building." The ship rested in a natural depression that had been perfectly cleared of the crystal vegetation, as if the landscape had reshaped itself to accommodate the vessel. No scorched earth, no damage from landing. The planet had simply welcomed the ship home. As they approached, the ship's surface began to change. What had appeared to be a seamless hull developed openings, not doors or airlocks in any human sense, but apertures that formed organically like flowers blooming in fast forward. "Contact team, this is Captain Torres. Are you seeing this?" "Affirmative, Captain," Marcus replied. "The ship is adapting to our presence. Maintain distance until we can establish communication." Marcus brought the convoy to a halt 200 meters from the alien vessel. Through the windshield, he could see figures emerging from the ship's organic openings. They moved with fluid grace, neither walking nor floating, but gliding across the ground with purpose. The beings were tall, perhaps 3 meters in height, with elongated limbs that seemed to bend in ways human joints couldn't accommodate. Their bodies appeared to be covered in the same flowing material as their ship, making it difficult to determine where the organism ended and the technology began. "They're beautiful," Emma whispered, her nose pressed against the window. Marcus had to agree. Despite their alien nature, there was something undeniably graceful about the beings. They moved without aggression, maintaining a respectful distance, while clearly indicating they wanted to communicate. One of the beings, larger than the others, with additional appendages that might have indicated rank or species variation, approached to within 50 meters of the convoy. It raised what might have been an arm, palm outward in a gesture that was remarkably human-like. David Park's voice crackled through the radio. "Dr. Chun, we're receiving a new transmission. It's different." "Different how?" "It's not mathematical this time. It sounds almost like music." Marcus activated his external audio pickups and immediately understood what David meant. The alien communication was indeed musical, complex harmonies that seemed to convey emotion as much as information. The melodies were hauntingly beautiful, with mathematical precision underlying every note. "Dr. Volkov, are you recording this?" "Already on it. The tonal patterns are incredibly sophisticated. If this is their language, it's unlike anything we've theorized." The lead alien being had stopped moving, and Marcus realized it was waiting for a response. On impulse, he activated his suit's external speakers and began humming a simple melody, "Silent Night," the same song he'd been singing to Emma just hours earlier. The effect was immediate and startling. The alien's form seemed to brighten, and the musical communication from the group became more animated, more excited. Within moments, Marcus heard his simple tune being reflected back to him, but transformed into something far more complex and beautiful. "They're learning our music," Sarah said in amazement. In real time, Emma pressed her hands against the window. "Daddy, they're singing our Christmas song." What followed was perhaps the most remarkable first contact in human history. The aliens quickly grasped the concept of musical communication, and within an hour, a complex dialogue had developed. They sang questions in mathematical harmonies, and the humans responded with simple melodies that conveyed basic concepts. The breakthrough came when Dr. Volkov realized the musical patterns contained embedded visual information. The aliens weren't just communicating through sound. They were painting pictures with music, creating three-dimensional images in the mind of the listener. Through this musical language, the aliens conveyed their story. They were called the Keepers, and they had been traveling the galaxy for millennia, monitoring and protecting worlds that hosted emerging intelligence. They had been watching Kepler 442b for thousands of years, waiting for the planet's crystalline consciousness to fully awaken. The planet itself was alive. Not just the crystal formations, but the entire world was a single, vast organism slowly awakening to self-awareness. The seismic disturbances weren't random geological events. They were birth pangs. The planet was trying to achieve consciousness, but the process was destroying its physical structure. The Keepers had come to midwife this cosmic birth, but they faced a dilemma. The planet's awakening would indeed destroy its physical form, but from that destruction would emerge a new kind of life, a consciousness that could exist in space itself, unbound by planetary limitations. The humans, however, were caught in the middle. They couldn't survive the planet's transformation, but the Keepers were forbidden by their ancient codes from directly interfering with developing species, unless that species asked for help. Through the musical dialogue, Marcus began to understand the choice they faced. The Keepers could evacuate the humans to Earth, but the journey would take years, and there was no guarantee the human survivors could adapt to the advanced technology required for the voyage. Alternatively, the Keepers could offer humanity something unprecedented, inclusion in their ancient civilization. The humans could be transformed, enhanced to survive not just the journey, but to thrive among the stars as the Keepers did. The cost was their humanity as they knew it. They would become something new, something more than human, but also something different. As Marcus struggled with the implications, Emma tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, the nice singers want to help us, don't they?" Looking down at his daughter's trusting face, framed by the breathing apparatus of her emergency suit, Marcus realized that the choice wasn't really about technology or transformation. It was about what it meant to be human in a universe far stranger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. The planet beneath their feet continued its death song, the crystalline consciousness singing itself into a new form of existence. Above them, the twin suns painted the sky in colors that would soon exist only in memory. And somewhere in the distance, 43 human beings stood at the crossroads between their past and a future they could barely comprehend, while alien beings waited patiently for an answer that would echo across the stars. The cubs had gazed at the Christmas tree in wonder. Now they faced a wonder beyond anything their small minds could grasp, the birth of a world mind and the transformation of their own species. The piercing siren no longer screamed through the silence. Instead, the air filled with an alien lullaby that spoke of journeys among distant stars and the infinite possibilities that awaited those brave enough to let go of what they were to become what they might be. The decision couldn't be postponed any longer. Through the musical dialogue with the Keepers, the humans learned that Kepler 442b's transformation would begin in less than 2 hours. The planet's crystalline consciousness was reaching critical mass, and when it achieved full awakening, the physical world would dissolve into pure energy and thought. Captain Torres called an emergency assembly using the convoy's communication network. All 43 personnel gathered in a rough circle beside the alien vessel, their emergency suits making them look like a collection of bulky, uncertain astronauts on an impossible shore. "People, we have a choice to make," Torres announced, her voice carrying clearly through their suit radios. "The Keepers have offered us 2 options. Option 1, they evacuate us to Earth using their technology. The journey will take approximately 18 months, and we would arrive as refugees with no resources and technology we can't begin to understand." Dr. Volkov stepped forward. "I've been analyzing their ship's energy signatures. The technology gap between us and them is roughly equivalent to the gap between a Stone Age hunter and a nuclear physicist. We will be completely dependent on their goodwill for survival." "Option 2, asked Chief Rodriguez. Torres looked toward the lead keeper, whose form had remained stationary throughout their deliberations, patient as a mountain. "They offer us transformation, enhancement. They can modify our biology to survive in space and among their civilization. We would become something more than human." A murmur ran through the group. Dr. Sarah Martinez raised her hand. "Captain, what exactly does transformation mean? Are we talking about genetic modification, cybernetic enhancement, or something else entirely?" Through the musical communication system, the Keepers provided more details. The transformation wasn't technological in any sense humans understood. It was evolutionary, a guided acceleration of human development that would unlock dormant potential in their DNA and neural structures. The enhanced humans would retain their memories, personalities, and fundamental nature, but their physical and mental capabilities would expand dramatically. They would be able to survive in the vacuum of space, communicate across vast distances through quantum entanglement, and perceive dimensions of reality currently invisible to human senses. And the cost? Torres asked. The keeper's musical response was complex, layered with harmonies that spoke of loss and gain in equal measure. Dr. Volkov translated as best she could. We would no longer be baseline human. Our children would be something new, adapted for life among the stars. There would be no going back. Marcus looked down at Emma, who was holding Tommy's hand while they both stared at the alien being with wide, curious eyes. The children seemed less afraid than the adults, their natural adaptability making them almost casual about the presence of beings who could reshape reality itself. "Daddy," Emma whispered through her suit radio, "the singing lady wants to show us something pretty." The lead keeper had indeed begun a new musical sequence, and this time the embedded visuals painted pictures directly in their minds. Marcus saw visions of vast cities that existed in the spaces between stars, populated by beings who had once been much like humans. He saw children, recognizably the descendants of various species, yet transformed into something magnificent, playing games that involved manipulating gravity and light itself. Most remarkably, he saw other human-like beings among the Keeper civilization. They weren't the first species to face this choice, and many had chosen enhancement over extinction. "These visions," Dr. Martinez said softly, "they're not hypothetical, are they? This is what we would become." The Keeper's response was a gentle affirmation, a musical phrase that spoke of countless species that had made the transition successfully over millions of years. Engineer Rodriguez stepped forward. "Captain, I need to ask the practical question. If we choose transformation, what about our mission? The data we've collected, the research we've done here?" Torres nodded. "Good point. Command Center, can you confirm our data transmission status to Earth?" David Park checked his instruments. All research data was automatically uploaded to Earth through the Quantum Communication Array 18 hours ago, Captain. Our mission findings are already safely recorded. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Their greatest scientific discovery, that Kepler 442b hosted a planetary consciousness, would be remembered on Earth, but the researchers who made the discovery would no longer be human enough to receive credit for it. "I have another question," said Dr. Lisa Chun, the station psychologist and Marcus's sister. "What about our relationships? Our families back on Earth?" This question prompted a long, complex musical response from the Keepers. The enhanced humans would be able to communicate with Earth, but the gap in development would grow over time. To their Earthbound relatives, the transformed humans would become increasingly alien, eventually reaching a point where meaningful communication would be impossible. They would outlive not just their Earth families, but entire human generations. They would watch their species evolve from afar, unable to directly interfere, but able to protect and guide from the shadows. "So we become guardians," Marcus said quietly. "Like they are." The Keeper's response was warm with approval, a musical phrase that spoke of responsibility, purpose, and the deep satisfaction that came from protecting younger species as they found their own paths to the stars. The debate continued for another hour, but Marcus found himself watching the children more than listening to the adults. Emma and Tommy had somehow made contact with smaller Keeper beings, perhaps young ones, though it was difficult to tell with such alien physiology. The children were attempting to teach the aliens human games, using gestures and simple sounds. What struck Marcus was how naturally the children adapted. They showed no fear, only curiosity and excitement. They were already becoming something new just through contact with the Keepers. "Vote," Captain Torres announced finally. "All personnel will vote by sealed ballot. David, prepare the electronic polling system." The voting process took 30 minutes. Each person entered their choice privately, and the results would be binding for the entire group. They would stay together regardless of the outcome. While they waited for the votes to be tallied, Marcus sat with Emma on a small rise overlooking the alien vessel. The planet's transformation was already beginning. The crystalline vegetation across the landscape had started to glow with internal light, and the ground beneath their feet hummed with barely contained energy. "Daddy, are we going to become space angels?" Emma asked. Marcus smiled at her simple way of processing the incomprehensible. "Maybe, sweetheart. Would you like that?" Emma considered the question seriously. I think so. The singing people are nice, and Tommy said they showed him how to make light with his hands. That sounds fun. Aren't you scared about leaving everything behind? Emma looked at him with the devastating logic of childhood. But, Daddy, we already left everything behind when we came here. And you said explorers have to be brave and try new things. From the mouths of babes. Marcus realized his 8-year-old daughter had grasped something the adults were struggling with. They were already far from everything they had known as normal human life. The choice wasn't between human and alien. It was between extinction and evolution. Dr. Chun, Captain Torres called through the radio. Results are in. The group gathered again around the convoy. Torres held the tablet, displaying the voting results, her expression unreadable behind her helmet's visor. The vote is unanimous, she announced. All 43 personnel have voted for transformation. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and terror. They had chosen the unknown over certain death, but the magnitude of what they were committing to was almost beyond comprehension. The lead keeper responded to their decision with a musical fanfare that seemed to make the very air sparkle with excitement. The transformation would begin immediately, conducted within the alien vessel where the process could be carefully monitored and guided. What should we expect? Dr. Martinez asked. The keeper's response painted images of a gradual change, not the violent transformation of science fiction, but a gentle evolution guided by technology so advanced it seemed like magic. They would retain consciousness throughout the process, able to communicate with each other and the keepers. The changes would unfold over several hours, allowing their minds to adapt as their bodies evolved. Most importantly, the enhanced humans would still be recognizably themselves. Marcus would still be Emma's father, Sarah would still be a scientist, and the children would still be children, just children adapted for a universe far larger and more wonderful than any Earthborn human had ever imagined. The boarding process was surprisingly familiar. The alien vessel's interior reconfigured itself to accommodate human physiology, creating corridors and chambers that felt almost normal. The walls glowed with soft, warm light that somehow managed to feel like sunlight despite being clearly artificial. Emma held Marcus's hand as they walked through corridors that curved in directions that shouldn't have been possible, but the ship's interior geometry somehow made perfect sense once you were inside it. The children adapted to the strange physics even faster than the adults, running ahead to explore while their parents struggled to comprehend architecture that existed in more than 3 dimensions. Daddy, the walls are singing, Emma called back, her voice filled with delight. Indeed, the ship itself seemed to be producing music, not through speakers but through the very structure of the vessel. It was a welcoming song, a lullaby designed to ease the fears of beings about to undergo profound change. They were led to a vast chamber at the heart of the ship, where individual transformation pods awaited each human. The pods looked organic, like oversized flowers that would close around each person during the process. Together, Marcus asked Emma as they approached their assigned pods. Together, she agreed, squeezing his hand. As Marcus settled into his transformation pod, the last thing he saw before the gentle sleep claimed him was the sight of 43 humans lying in alien flowers, while overhead the crystalline consciousness of Kepler 442b began to sing its planet song of transformation and transcendence. In their emergency shelter, abandoned now, a makeshift Christmas tree continued to glow with multicolored lights, its holographic ornaments dancing in the empty air as seismic tremors shook the station. Soon, even that last remnant of human presence would be consumed by the planet's metamorphosis. But the children who had gazed at that tree in wonder were about to become something that could create their own light among the stars, carry their own music across the void, and watch over younger species with the gentle wisdom of beings who had once been human cubs around a Christmas tree on a world that sang itself into cosmic consciousness. The transformation was beginning, and with it, humanity's first steps toward joining the ancient community of enhanced beings who serve as guardians and guides in a universe far stranger and more wonderful than any Christmas story ever told. Marcus awakened to sensations that had no human names. His consciousness returned gradually, like surfacing from deep, warm water, but the body that housed that consciousness was magnificently, impossibly different. He could feel the quantum foam that underlaid reality itself, sensed the gravitational songs of distant stars, and perceived colors that existed beyond the spectrum human eyes had ever evolved to see. Yet he was still Marcus Chun. His memories remained intact. Emma's first steps, his wife's laugh before the cancer took her, the pride he'd felt when accepting the Kepler mission. The fundamental core of his identity had not only survived the transformation, but had been enhanced, polished to a clarity that made his previous existence seem like looking at the world through frosted glass. "Daddy." The voice was Emma's, but transformed. Where once her words had been confined to acoustic vibrations in air, now her communication rippled through multiple dimensions simultaneously, carrying emotional undertones and conceptual depths that human language could never convey. Marcus opened eyes that could now perceive across multiple spectrums simultaneously. Emma stood beside his transformation pod. No, not stood. She hovered gracefully a few centimeters above the chamber floor, her small form radiating a soft bioluminescence that pulsed in harmony with her heartbeat. She was still recognizably his daughter, but perfected. Her features retained their human proportions, but her skin had taken on a subtle crystalline quality that caught and refracted light in impossible ways. Most remarkably, her eyes, still the same blue that had reminded him so much of her mother, now contained depths that seemed to extend into infinity. "Emma," Marcus whispered, his voice carrying harmonics he'd never possessed before. "How do you feel?" She giggled, and the sound created visible ripples in the air around her. "I feel sparkly, Daddy, and I can see the music." Around the chamber, the other transformed humans were awakening. Marcus watched in amazement as his colleagues, people he'd known for years, emerged from their pods as enhanced versions of themselves. Dr. Martinez's scientific curiosity had been magnified into an almost supernatural ability to understand complex systems at a glance. Chief Rodriguez's engineering skills now extended to manipulating matter at the molecular level with thought alone. But it was the children who adapted most quickly to their new capabilities. Tommy was already experimenting with creating small light constructs with his hands, while 6-year-old Susan had discovered she could phase shift slightly out of normal three-dimensional space. "They're remarkable," said a voice behind Marcus. He turned to see the lead keeper approaching, its form now somehow more comprehensible to his enhanced perception. The being was ancient beyond human understanding, but its fundamental nature was one of patient guardianship and infinite compassion. "Will they still be children?" Marcus asked, watching Emma attempt to teach Tommy how to make his light constructs change colors. The keeper's response came not as music now, but as direct conceptual transfer, ideas and emotions flowing between minds without the medium of language. The children would retain their essential childlike nature, but their development would follow new paths. They would grow into beings capable of shepherding entire star systems while retaining the wonder and curiosity that made them so adaptable. "And us." Marcus gestured toward the adult humans, who were still struggling to understand their new capabilities. The keeper's communication carried gentle amusement. Adults always took longer to adapt. Their established neural patterns had to be carefully rewired, while children's minds simply accepted the new reality and began exploring its possibilities. Captain Torres approached, her enhanced form crackling with barely contained energy. Her military training had translated into an almost supernatural awareness of strategic possibilities across multiple timescales simultaneously. "Status report," she said, though the words now carried layers of meaning that encompassed their physical condition, psychological adaptation, and readiness for the next phase of their journey. "The transformation is complete," the keeper replied. "Your species has successfully made the transition. You are now capable of surviving in space indefinitely, communicating across galactic distances, and perceiving reality across multiple dimensional frameworks." Dr. Volkov materialized beside them, literally materialized, as she was still learning to control her new ability to phase in and out of normal space. "The implications are extraordinary," she said, her enhanced intellect already grasping concepts that would have taken human scientists decades to understand. "We're not just enhanced humans anymore. We're a bridge between what humanity was and what it could become." Through the ship's hull, which was now transparent to their enhanced perception, Marcus could see Kepler 442b in its final moments of physical existence. The planet's surface had become a crystalline web of pure energy, the awakening consciousness preparing to shed its material form and exist as pure thought among the stars. It's beautiful, Emma breathed, her hands slipping into Marcus's. Together, they watched the birth of a cosmic mind. The transformation wasn't violent or explosive. Instead, the planet simply let go. The matter that had composed mountains and oceans dispersed into organized clouds of intelligent particles, while the consciousness that had been awakening for millennia finally achieved full self-awareness and began its first tentative communications with the galactic community. "Welcome," the keepers sang to the newborn world mind, their musical greeting carrying protocols and wisdom accumulated over millions of years of such births. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks, tears that now sparkled with their own inner light. They had witnessed something that perhaps a dozen species in galactic history had ever seen, the birth of a planetary consciousness. "What happens now?" he asked. The keeper's response painted pictures of their immediate future. The transformed humans would spend time aboard the keeper vessels, learning to use their new capabilities and understanding their role in the galactic community. They would be trained as guardians themselves, eventually taking responsibility for guiding younger species through their own developmental challenges. But first, they had to say goodbye to their past selves. The Keeper ship's communication array was unlike anything human technology had ever achieved. It could transmit messages across galactic distances instantaneously, using quantum entanglement networks that span the known universe. Captain Torres had composed a final message to Earth Command, explaining what had happened and why they had chosen transformation over evacuation. The message would reach Earth in minutes rather than years, but the recipients would face a dilemma. How do you classify a species that has voluntarily evolved beyond human baseline? Were the transformed researchers still human, or had they become something else entirely? Marcus composed his own message to his sister on Earth, trying to explain the impossible in words that baseline humans could understand. "Lisa, by the time you receive this, I will no longer be the brother you knew, but I will still be your brother. Emma, and I have chosen to become something new, something that can help protect humanity as it grows toward the stars. We're not lost. We're scouts, exploring territories that our species will eventually reach on its own. When that day comes, we'll be waiting to help guide the way." The messages were transmitted along with complete scientific data about the transformation process, the Keeper civilization, and humanity's potential future development. Earth scientists would have decades of research material to study, and, perhaps more importantly, the knowledge that humanity was not alone in the universe. Over the following weeks, the transformed humans learned to navigate their new existence. They discovered they could survive in the vacuum of space, breathing starlight, and feeding on cosmic radiation. They learned to communicate across vast distances by quantum entanglement, allowing instantaneous contact with other enhanced beings throughout the galaxy. Most remarkably, they began to understand their purpose. The universe was vast and filled with developing civilizations, many of which faced extinction-level challenges as they grew toward spacefaring capability. The enhanced beings served as a safety net, offering guidance and protection to species that might otherwise destroy themselves during critical developmental phases. Emma adapted to the role with the unconscious confidence of childhood. She discovered she had a natural talent for communicating with non-humanoid intelligences, her child's mind capable of thinking in patterns that adult logic couldn't achieve. Within days, she was serving as a translator between the Keepers and a crystalline intelligence from the Vega system. "Daddy, the crystal people think in geometric shapes," she explained to Marcus as they shared a meal that consisted of pure energy converted directly to nutrients by their enhanced metabolism. "They're trying to build a mathematics that can hold their entire civilization's history, but they need help understanding temporal paradoxes." Marcus marveled at his daughter's casual description of concepts that would have challenged the greatest human philosophers. She was still 8 years old in many ways. She still wanted bedtime stories and got excited about pretty lights, but her capacity for understanding had expanded into realms that redefined what it meant to be intelligent. The other children were developing their own specializations. Tommy had become fascinated with stellar engineering, learning to manipulate solar flares and magnetic fields with the casual ease that human children once built with blocks. Susan had discovered an affinity for dimensional mathematics, able to navigate through folded space-time as easily as walking down a corridor. The adults, meanwhile, were learning to let go of their previous limitations. Dr. Martinez found that her enhanced intellect allowed her to understand biological systems across multiple species simultaneously, making her invaluable in first-contact scenarios with organic civilizations. Chief Rodriguez had become a master of exotic matter manipulation, able to construct space habitats from the quantum foam itself. But perhaps the most profound change was in their understanding of time. Enhanced beings experienced temporal flow differently than baseline humans. They could perceive multiple time streams simultaneously, understanding past and potential futures as flowing patterns rather than fixed sequences. This temporal perception allowed them to see the long-term consequences of their interventions with developing species. They learned to guide rather than direct, to protect without controlling, to offer opportunities without forcing choices. 3 months after the transformation, Marcus stood on the observation deck of a Keeper vessel, watching a young star system where a reptilian species was taking its first tentative steps into space. The enhanced humans had been assigned to monitor this system, ready to offer subtle guidance if the species faced challenges beyond its current capabilities. Emma floated beside him, her attention split between the star system and a complex mathematical game she was playing with young keepers through quantum-entangled thought patterns. "Do you ever miss being human?" Marcus asked her. Emma considered the question seriously, her enhanced mind examining multiple layers of meaning. "I miss some things," she said finally. "I miss not understanding everything so clearly. Sometimes I wish I could be surprised again the way I used to be." Marcus nodded, understanding. The enhanced state brought clarity and capability, but it also meant the loss of certain kinds of wonder. They could no longer experience the simple amazement of not understanding how something worked. But Emma continued, "I like being able to help other children. Yesterday, I helped a little gas being from the Proxima system learn how to make stable thought forms. She was so happy when she figured it out. That was a trade-off, Marcus realized. They had given up the innocence of ignorance in exchange for the ability to guide others toward understanding. They had become cosmic teachers, helping younger species avoid the pitfalls that could destroy developing civilizations. In the distance, the reptilian species launched their first interstellar probe. It would take decades to reach its destination, but Marcus could see the probability streams flowing from this moment. Most led to successful expansion and eventual contact with the galactic community. Some led to destruction, war, and extinction. If those darker possibilities began to manifest, the enhanced humans would be ready to offer the kind of subtle assistance that could tip the balance toward survival and growth. The cubs who had gazed at a Christmas tree in wonder and innocence were gone, replaced by beings who could create their own light in the darkness between stars. But they carried the memory of that wonder with them, using it to help other young minds discover the joy of understanding a universe far stranger and more beautiful than any bedtime story ever told. The piercing siren that had once screamed through the silence had been replaced by something far more beautiful. The quiet song of guardianship that enhanced beings sang to watch over the young species of the galaxy, ensuring that somewhere, somehow, there would always be cubs gazing at wondrous trees with innocent eyes full of possibility. 50 years had passed since the transformation, though time itself had become a fluid concept for the enhanced humans. Marcus could perceive the passage of years as a flowing river rather than discrete moments, watching the development of dozens of civilizations across the galaxy while maintaining awareness of each individual day. Emma, now technically 58 years old but still appearing as a young woman due to the enhanced metabolism that had effectively granted them immortality, served as Earth's primary liaison. Her unique position as one who remembered being baseline human while possessing enhanced capabilities made her invaluable for communicating with her birth species. Today, she stood in the command center of Guardian Station, a massive construct built in the space between dimensions that served as headquarters for the enhanced human contingent. Through quantum-entangled communication arrays, she maintained constant contact with 17 different developing civilizations, while part of her consciousness monitored Earth's steady progress toward its own enhancement threshold. "Daddy, the Earth Council is ready for the final briefing," Emma announced, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that would have been impossible for baseline vocal cords to produce. Marcus materialized beside her, literally stepping through folded space from his position monitoring a budding civilization in the Andromeda Galaxy. The enhanced humans had learned to be in multiple places simultaneously, their consciousness distributed across quantum networks while maintaining individual identity. "How are they handling the news?" he asked. Emma's expression carried the weight of someone who had spent decades trying to bridge the gap between enhanced and baseline consciousness. About as well as can be expected. Fear, excitement, philosophical debates that have been raging for 30 years. The usual human response to transcendence. Through the station's viewing portals, which weren't really portals, but direct quantum connections to various points in space-time, Marcus could see Earth in its current state. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years earlier, established colonies on 17 worlds, and was now facing the same evolutionary pressure that had once threatened them on Kepler 442b. The difference was that this time they had guides. The enhanced humans had spent 5 decades preparing for this moment, learning from the Keepers how to offer guidance without forcing choice, how to protect without controlling. They had watched other species make the transition successfully, and a few that had chosen extinction over evolution. "The vote is scheduled for tomorrow," Emma continued. "Final tally from all Earth colonies and the home world, whether to accept enhancement or to remain baseline human with enhanced protection." It was the same choice the Kepler research team had faced, but now offered to an entire species of 8 billion individuals spread across multiple star systems. The logistics alone were staggering, but the Keepers had promised to facilitate whatever choice humanity made. "Any change in the preliminary counts?" Marcus asked. "Still running about 60-40 in favor of enhancement," Emma replied. "But there's been a significant development. The children's vote." Marcus raised an eyebrow, an expression that now created subtle gravitational ripples in the space around his head. "Children's vote." The Earth Council decided that anyone under 18 should have a separate voice in the decision, since they would be most affected by the consequences. The preliminary results from the under 18 demographic are 97% in favor of enhancement. Marcus wasn't surprised. Children adapted to new concepts more easily than adults, just as Emma and the other Kepler children had decades earlier. To them, the idea of becoming something more than human was an adventure rather than an existential crisis. And the Synthesis Project. Emma's expression brightened. "Successful beyond our best projections." The Synthesis Project had been Marcus's initiative, an attempt to prove that enhanced and baseline humans could coexist successfully. Over the past decade, carefully selected baseline humans have been given limited enhancements that allowed them to communicate directly with their evolved cousins, while remaining fundamentally human. The project had produced remarkable results. Enhanced baseline partnerships had solved scientific problems that neither group could have tackled alone, created art that transcended both human and enhanced aesthetic traditions, and developed new forms of philosophy that bridged the gap between mortal and immortal perspectives. "Dr. Martinez wants to speak with you," Emma said, gesturing toward the communication alcove where their former colleague maintained contact with Earth's scientific community. Marcus found Sarah Martinez in deep quantum-entangled conversation with the directors of Earth's major research institutions. Her enhanced form shimmered with data streams as she processed multiple conversations simultaneously while maintaining separate awareness of each individual discussion. "Marcus," she said without breaking her other communications, "we have a situation. The Earth scientists are asking for something we didn't anticipate." "What kind of something?" "They want to observe the enhancement process directly. Not undergo it themselves, but witness it happening to volunteers. They're concerned about making a species-wide decision without understanding exactly what it entails." Marcus considered the implications. The enhancement process was intensely personal, involving not just physical transformation, but fundamental changes to consciousness itself. Allowing baseline humans to observe would be unprecedented. What do the Keepers say? That's the interesting part. They're intrigued by the request. Apparently, no species has ever asked to observe before making their decision. Most either accept or reject based on philosophical grounds rather than empirical observation. Through the station's communication networks, Marcus could sense the activity aboard dozens of Keeper vessels positioned throughout human space. The ancient beings were preparing for whichever choice humanity made, but he detected something unusual in their harmonics: excitement. The Keepers, who had guided countless species through this transition over millions of years, were genuinely curious about how humanity would approach the decision. set up the observation protocols. Marcus decided, if they want to see what enhancement really means, they should see it clearly. The observation session was scheduled for the following week, with carefully selected volunteers from each major Earth colony undergoing enhancement, while baseline human scientists monitored every aspect of the process. The enhanced humans would serve as interpreters, translating the experience into terms baseline consciousness could comprehend. Emma volunteered to be the primary interface, her unique background making her the ideal translator between human and post-human experience. As the week progressed, she worked with Earth scientists to develop monitoring equipment that could track the transformation process without interfering with it. The day of the observation arrived with unprecedented excitement throughout human space. Scientific stations across 17 worlds focused their attention on the Keeper vessel positioned near Earth's moon, where the demonstration would take place. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a neuroscientist from the Mars colony, served as the primary baseline observer. She had developed revolutionary techniques for mapping consciousness, and her work would be crucial for documenting how the enhancement process affected human awareness. "Are you ready?" Emma asked her as they prepared to enter the Keeper vessel. Dr. Walsh checked her monitoring equipment one final time, as ready as anyone could be to watch the human species potentially evolve beyond recognition. The Keeper vessel had configured itself specifically for the observation session, creating spaces where baseline and enhanced consciousness could interact safely. The transformation chamber was surrounded by observation galleries equipped with sensors that could track quantum fluctuations in consciousness itself. 5 volunteers had agreed to undergo enhancement during the observation session, 3 adults and 2 teenagers who represented the broad spectrum of human experience. Each volunteer was connected to monitoring equipment that would allow the baseline observers to track their psychological and physiological changes throughout the process. "Beginning transformation sequence," announced the lead keeper, its musical communication now accompanied by harmonic translations that baseline humans could understand. Marcus watched Dr. Walsh's expression as the transformation began. Her scientific training kept her focused on her instruments, but he could see the wonder and terror warring in her eyes as she witnessed something that challenged every assumption about the nature of human consciousness. The volunteers were placed in the organic transformation pods that had once cradled the Kepler research team. As the enhancement process began, Dr. Walsh's monitoring equipment registered changes that shouldn't have been possible according to baseline human science. "The neural activity is expanding beyond the physical boundaries of the brain," Dr. Walsh reported, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "The consciousness is somehow extending into quantum fields around the body." Emma served as interpreter, translating the volunteers' experiences into concepts baseline humans could grasp. "They're describing awareness of cosmic background radiation as a physical sensation," she explained. "They can feel the gravitational pull of nearby stars as clearly as you might feel wind on your skin." As the transformation progressed, the volunteers' reports became increasingly difficult for baseline consciousness to comprehend. They described seeing colors that existed beyond the electromagnetic spectrum, understanding mathematical concepts that baseline humans would need years to learn, and feeling emotional connections to beings they'd never met across galactic distances. "The most remarkable thing," Dr. Walsh observed, "is that they're still recognizably the same people. Their core personalities, their relationships, their fundamental values, all of that remains intact while their capabilities expand exponentially." The transformation took 6 hours. When it was complete, the 5 enhanced volunteers emerged from their pods as beings who could survive in space, communicate across vast distances, and perceive reality across multiple dimensions simultaneously. But they were still human in the ways that mattered. Dr. Walsh spent another week conducting interviews with the newly enhanced volunteers, documenting how their fundamental humanity had survived and been strengthened by the transformation process. Her reports would form the basis for Earth's final decision. The vote, when it came, was closer than the preliminary counts had suggested, 54% in favor of enhancement, with the children's vote providing the decisive margin. Earth's government announced that humanity would undergo voluntary enhancement, with the process beginning immediately for those who chose it, and protective measures established for those who preferred to remain baseline. The transformation of humanity took 3 years to complete. Unlike the emergency enhancement on Kepler 442b, This was a carefully planned process that allowed families and communities to make the transition together. Enhanced humans served as guides and interpreters, helping baseline humans understand what they were choosing to become. Marcus and Emma worked together to establish the new Earth protocols, systems that would allow enhanced humans to maintain connection with their baseline cousins for as long as the baseline community survived. The enhanced humans would serve as guardians and protectors, while baseline humans would continue to develop at their own pace. On the 5th anniversary of the transformation's completion, Marcus stood in what had once been the observation deck of Kepler Station, now preserved as a memorial within Guardian Station's dimensional architecture. The makeshift Christmas tree, kept stable by enhanced physics, still glowed with its multicolored lights. Emma materialized beside him, her consciousness returning from a mission to guide a newly discovered silicon-based civilization in the Centauri system. Feeling nostalgic, she asked, noting his contemplation of the preserved tree. Remembering, Marcus replied, how it all began with children watching lights on a tree. Emma smiled, her expression carrying harmonics of deep contentment. The vegan crystalline entities I was working with today reminded me of those old tree ornaments. They create light patterns to communicate, just like our Christmas decorations. Around them, Guardian Station hummed with the activity of enhanced humans monitoring and protecting hundreds of developing civilizations. Former members of the Kepler research team now served as senior guardians, their unique experience making them valuable guides for other species facing the enhancement threshold. Tommy had become a master of stellar engineering, helping young civilizations stabilize unstable stars and create safe solar systems for development. Susan had specialized in dimensional architecture, designing spaces that existed between realities where different species could interact safely. All of them remained recognizably human in their core values, protecting the innocent, nurturing growth, seeking knowledge and understanding. But they had become something more, beings capable of shepherding entire galaxies while remembering what it was like to be small and curious and wonderstruck by simple lights on an alien tree. Do you think we made the right choice? Emma asked, settling beside her father in the preserved observation chamber. Marcus looked at his daughter, eternal child and cosmic guardian, enhanced being who still laughed with delight when she discovered something new, immortal consciousness who remembered every moment of her mortal childhood. I think, he said finally, that we became what we were always meant to be. The cubs who gazed at the Christmas tree were already reaching for the stars. We just learned how to touch them. Outside Guardian Station, across thousands of star systems, millions of enhanced humans continued their work of protection and guidance. And in the preserved chamber where it all began, a Christmas tree glowed eternally with multicolored lights, a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with children watching wonders in the darkness, unafraid of the piercing sirens that signal the end of one world and the beginning of everything else the universe has to offer. The cubs had gazed at the Christmas tree in innocent wonder. Now, they had become the light that guides other young eyes towards stars they never dreamed they could reach.